All right, gang. Welcome once again to the weekly Mac Forum video chat. Hope that you're ready for today's activities. Got a few things on the agenda for you. Hopefully, some information you'll find useful. As you know, we pushed the show off a day because of the Super Bowl yesterday. Hope that you guys enjoyed the game. And maybe, just maybe, if you were lucky, your team won. Hopefully, you didn't have any money bet on the game. Apparently, there were a lot of people that lost quite a bit on that game. I wasn't one of them, thankfully. We'll go ahead and we'll dive right into this week's forum roundup. Got a few things for you. And one note in a minute, we're going to get to some iPhone tips. I had hoped to have those recorded so that you could show a little video clip. Things got a little sideways today. I wasn't able to get them recorded. So I may post those kind of as an addendum to the actual show later on at the tail end of the show. I'll let you know when that gets posted. It depends on, it may be tomorrow before I can get those recorded. But anyway, let's dive right into this week's forum activities. As you can see, our newest member is named Ma Jake. That was as of about 5 minutes ago when I refreshed the starter page. So hopefully all of our new members will be finding some interesting things in the forum. And let's dive right in and take a look around, see what we see for this week. A couple of things. There were several things I could have put in, but a couple of the threads that seemed the most interesting was one of them. Someone asked the question, what do you do with your iPhone? As you can see, it's Ralph Morgan. Remember Ralph Morgan wants to know. He says when his iPhone is in lock screen, when the screen is locked and a call comes in, he gets a slide button to answer. But when the phone is not in lock screen mode, he gets two buttons. One red one, which obviously declines the call, and then the green button to accept. And what he wants to know is there any way to get that behavior if the lock screen is active? As far as I know, and the rest of our forum denizens know, there's no way to really duplicate that behavior. I understand why Ralph wants it. It'd be a good, quick way to decline calls that you don't want to deal with right at that moment. Would have been especially helpful during political season when you're getting calls all the time that you might not necessarily want to answer right at that moment. The closest thing that we can come up to duplicating that kind of behavior, I want to scroll down here so I can see, is member Ian mentions that the closest that he can think of, and I kind of concur with him after thinking about it a little bit, without resorting to the slide button or red-green buttons, one way is to use the power button. It's on the top right side because this stops the call immediately. Two presses of the power button will send the call to voicemail. And that a lot of time that's what I do with a call that I can't answer right away. I'll just, rather than let it ring and ring and ring, even if it's on silent mode, that's kind of annoying because, interestingly enough, I have trouble feeling my iPhone on vibrate mode sometimes, but I usually, unless it's kind of noisy, hear the vibrate motor. And if it rings several times, that's kind of annoying. So a lot of times I'll just reach down and hit the button. And if you, as Jake says, if you hit it, as Ian says, if you hit it twice, it's going to send it to voicemail, which you may or may not want to do. Once usually stops the call, twice will send it to voicemail. And that works. And I'm going to avail myself of that option right at the moment here because I happen to be getting a call. And I don't want to handle that right now. So we're going to put that to use. That's a handy feature, and I always forget which button press does it. So that's a good one for you to know. Not really a solution, but it beats sitting there and letting the call keep ringing and ringing and annoying you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this page out of the way and move on to a couple of other things. This one, not exactly a forum roundup, but once again, it's something that I thought you might find interesting. My wife sent this one to me. It's a Fox News off of their tech site, their tech section, and it's a Q&A. The lead-in, as you can see, this is from February 5th, from the Kim Commando show, is your smartphone, your smart TV spying on you? And the initial part of the article talks about the fact that some of the apps installed on smart TVs can maybe send a little more information to the manufacturers than you would like. That's kind of how they usually how they keep track of making recommendations for you. If they can recommend shows that you like, that's based in part on tracking your uh, viewing behavior. And if you don't want to do that, or you at least want to have a look at what kind of information that they're collecting, there's a link in this article that talks about how to change the privacy settings on your smart TV. I won't go through all the steps because it varies a little bit from model to model, but this link is a good link to follow to get you started thinking in the right direction about that. There's a section in here on ATM skimmers, those little devices that look like a card slot for an ATM machine. What they're actually designed to do is to, when you insert your card, it gathers the card number and in most cases PIN number, so that a scammer can come back, retrieve that information, and then use the card and the PIN number. This gives you some tips about how to notice if there's a possibility of a skimmer being installed somewhere. One of the tips that I heard a number of years ago, and I think this is kind of interesting. I ran into someone, I forget where I read the article, who they will not use an ATM machine that's not actually built into the an actual building. It was just too easy for some of these like portable kiosk things to be made up to look like an actual ATM when they're not. There are a number of different scams involving these kinds of skimmers. You want to keep an eye on that. This gives you a good link to that. Um, Picking up your phone, this is a handy tip for travelers about the best way to use your phone when you're in Europe. Uh, and this kind of calling from one country to another uh, used to be a bigger pain in the butt than it is now. Uh, Generally, the biggest horror story you run into is they forget to turn their phones off and end up with roaming charges. In some cases, you run into situations where the type of radio or type of network that your phone is dependent on is not used in the country that you're in. There's some tips there. As you can see, there's a link there on how to deal with that. Tracking receipts, other security issues, so that you know how to keep track of what you're spending and spotting some errors anytime there's a big problem there. And then the last part of this article talks with a link about cybersecurity lingo. And there's a link to the Kim Commando show, but there are others there, uh, and it's just a handy glossary of terms that are related to internet security. These terms seem to be constantly changing, and sometimes they're not used quite accurately. And I'll give you an example. One term that seems to be constantly thrown about when you talk about cybersecurity is virus. Some writers use the term virus to refer to any kind of malware that can infest a computer. Most writers are a little bit more careful about that. They use the term virus to refer to a piece of code, usually disguised as something else, but it's a piece of code that is self-replicating. In other words, it gets to your system, it infects your system, but then you can unknowingly pass it on to someone else. That's a little different from the kind of adware that you get. Sometimes you'll get something where you go to a website, you pick up a piece of malware, and all of a sudden it starts redirecting you to places that you didn't want to go to. That's a little different because those things tend not to be self-replicating. So keep up with sort of the cyber lingo. This is a good place to start without being too bogged down in all the technicalities. All right, this article, I thought this was kind of interesting. It's Macworld's Mac 911. A lot of times when I read Mac 911, it's been Christopher Breen, but this time it's Glenn Fishman. Fleischman. And this is an article talking about alternatives to Apple's AirPlay. Now, as you may know, AirPlay is the system that Apple has set up that allows you to take content that's on your phone or in some cases in your computer, bounce it wirelessly from there to an Apple TV so that it can be played back on your TV or your stereo. Now, this I find works pretty reliably. I'm using it at the moment to AirPlay things to my stereo without having to run a wire from the computer to the stereo. It works really nicely, but one of the Macworld readers wanted to know, given that Apple is getting out of the wireless router business, does that mean that they're going to get out of AirPlay? And if they do, what alternatives do you have? Now, I don't know if Apple's going to get out of the AirPlay business. I personally think it would be smarter to stay in and have that technology available to you until you come up with something better. But if you want to know about some of the alternatives, including some that work a little bit better with Windows, you can look at some things that are listed in this article. One of them is Rogue Amoeba's airfoil technology, which is their way of dealing with AirPlay for some devices that don't already have it. So this is a good article to look at. It's a real short read, non-technical. Even if you're not a tech junkie, I think you'll pick this up in no time and get a pretty good understanding of what's going on. All right, next, this one, Gordon Mayung, executive editor of PC World. This time he's writing for Macworld. And this particular article is the truth behind the MacBook Pro's quote unquote terrible battery life. This one, I'm still kind of reading through. It's got a wealth of information. I do want to say one thing to keep in mind when you read about posts about battery life on forums, both a Mac forum and in other forums. A couple things you need to keep in mind. First of all, battery life is somewhat, to some extent, dependent on the physical size of the battery. If the chemical composition of the battery is the same, a smaller battery is almost by definition not going to have the same capacity as a larger battery. Now, that's if the chemical composition is the same. Obviously, that becomes less true as you start changing the composition of the battery. If you compare, for example, NiCad batteries to lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries, for the most part, last a ton longer than their NiCad counterparts. So there's a lot of things to consider. Another thing to consider when you read posts about battery life, both in forums and in websites, is know the conditions under which they made the test. Most of us can get can extend the battery life of whatever device we're using if we make certain adjustments. We darken the screen a little bit. We maybe, on my old MacBook Pro, and my 2008 MacBook Pro, it essentially had two modes, one to save battery life and the other one to provide the horsepower. Well, since I ran it uh, connected to a power outlet most of the time, I put it in the mode for better performance. But that significantly alters your battery life if you forget to go back in and change it when you need to conserve battery. So there's all kinds of little things to consider. And when you look at these articles, try to find out, and most of the better articles will tell you what conditions they use to conduct the test. Ask yourself this question: is what they're doing with the article consistent with the way I use uh, a similar device? So, for example, a user that is doing high power video editing or high powered, they're doing audio, they're capturing audio out in the field or capturing video out in the field. Maybe they're doing some video editing. That places a much, much different demand on the system than someone who is just surfing the internet and checking email, that kind of thing. So your mileage is going to vary if the article is based on heavy duty use and your use is not quite so heavy, and is going to vary to some extent. One of the things that really can drive your battery life figures nuts is how often is your machine searching for an acceptable wireless network. That is one that you can link up to and sign on. Much like your cell phone, your cell phone, if you're roaming about and your phone is having to spend a lot of time looking for the cell signal, then it's going to burn a lot of battery, and you're going to notice that by the end of the day, your battery will be significantly lower than it is on days when you're around trusted networks and you don't have to search and you're getting good signal. Same thing is true when your laptop starts searching for wireless networks to join. So that might be one way to alter and improve your battery life. So this is a good article to take a look at. It give you an idea of what some of the newer systems are like, and some of the things in it may be applicable to you even on some of the older equipment. All right, now this particular article, this is one of the two that I had kind of hoped to have a little short video clip of. Didn't get a chance to shoot that earlier today, so I'll kind of verbally explain it to you and and go through it. And if I get a chance, I'll add an actual video clip to it later. As you can see from the picture, the iPhone or the in this picture has two web pages open. One of them appears to be a page of bookmarks, and the other is the iPhone Life site. And it's split so that each one is taking up half of the screen. Now you can you can do split view. Obviously, it's a little more readable on an iPad because of the larger screen. This article talks about implementing split screen view in both the iPad and the iPhone. It's a little bit different for each one. It varies just a little bit. It goes through a few tips on how to use it. So this is a good overview of things. It's pretty easy to implement. Okay, this specifically talks about split screen with Safari and the iPad. Okay, and what you want to do is tap a link and hold it. Don't let go, and select Open in Split View, just like you can see them doing here on the screen. And there's a keyboard shortcut for that. Okay, tap Command N on an external keyboard. Doesn't work with the regular built-in keyboard, but on an external keyboard, Command N should work. And then you can drag a tab from its space to either the left or right side of the screen to open it in split view. So you got some tabs there. You drag one of them either to one side or the other, and it'll open that tab in split view. You can also use the tab button. Okay, if you get into tab view, and it'll look like two overlapping squares, as you can see right here in this corner. That's going to be your cue that it'll open in split view, and the split view option will pop out along with a couple of other tab options. You can open these, then you can open these in split view. Now, you can only view Safari pages side by side at a 50% ratio. Okay. On other apps, you can drag the center to whatever ratio you like. So in other words, Safari right now, as it is, when you open it on the iPad in split mode, each page is going to take up half the screen. With some other apps, you can change it. So for example, one app might take up 75% of the screen, the other one takes up 25, 60, 40, different ratios in there. So kind of experiment with that a little bit, see what you think of that. That particular article comes from Connor Carey, who is someone that we've used the tips here on the show before a number of times. Seems like almost every week we've got not only a tip from my life, iPhone life, but also a tip from Connor Carey. So this is becoming a regular feature of the show there. Some really good tips on that site. The writing is pretty concise and easy to follow. And then last but not least, today, I'm going to get you over to one more thing here. As soon as my fingers will click on the right thing. Come on, there we go. All right, this one is one of the ones that I really was thinking would make a good video clip, because it's how to easily select text on an iPad with an iPhone using the keyboard. Okay. I have a tendency, I know that when you tap on a word and hold it for a second, you get a square, a blue square outline with little rounded corners, and you can then drag those corners to enlarge the screen, the square, and have that control what you've selected. Well, I have to tell you, I have a tendency to fat finger those things a little bit and have a little difficulty sometimes selecting text, particularly on the iPhone. Even on the larger, the iPhone 6s and 7s, it's a little tough for me. Big hands, and the fingers don't always do what I tell them to do. So these tips might be good. I need to try these. I ran into this just yesterday, right before the Super Bowl, so I haven't had a chance to really test it. But here's another one that you might give a try to. Place two fingers on the keyboard. Open up an app like Notes that that will accept some text. Notes is a good one. And then place two fingers on the keyboard. Press into the screen like you're gonna just activate something, and hold it. Okay, the letters kind of disappear and fuzz out a little bit, kind of like they do in this picture. Okay, and when you go to move the cursor, slide a finger along along the screen until you get to where you want to stop at. So you're kind of sliding from one side to the other, and then move the cursor to where you want to start, and then hold two fingers to the keyboard and activate there. That's basically the equivalent of a mouse click, telling you this is where I want to start. And then you keep both fingers on the screen, move one up or down and over to highlight. So you're gonna keep one finger down on the keyboard to press the whole time. The other fingers are going to be the one you're going to move to select the text. And that's kind of the equivalent of holding your mouse button down with one finger while you move the mouse with the other one. That's the best analogy that I can think of for this. Uh, as I say, when I get a chance, I'm going to shoot a little video and add it to this show, but it might be a day or two before I get a chance to do that. On the iPhone, you do it in a similar way. You're going to put one finger on the keyboard, press the screen to activate the trackpad function. And you'll know once again, you'll know you have it when the letters kind of start to disappear. You get that blank sort of keyboard like you see there in the screen. Right? Slide your finger along the screen until you get to the spot you want. Okay. To highlight it, you place the cursor where you want to start. And when you still got that trackpad mode activated, keep your finger on the screen, press into the screen again. This highlights a word. And then you can slide your finger in the appropriate direction, up, down, left, right, to select the text around it. And when you get to, you have enough of the text, it's going to take a little practice, okay, especially on both the iPad and the iPhone. But you'll probably get the hang of it. I'm going to give this a try because this might be much, much better than anything I've been doing previously, especially when I'm trying to insert a quote from a web page. As you can tell, I don't post a lot of stuff from my phone. I don't do a lot of text editing on my phone. It's kind of a frustration point for me. I do a little bit more on the iPad, not as much as I used to, because it seems like signal issues in a couple of the buildings I work in cut down on the usefulness of that. I used to bounce different things back and forth for me with the phone, or having something there, having it open, selecting something, cutting and pasting into another document. I'm not doing as much of that as I used to. It can be a real hassle sometimes if you tend to fat finger the keyboard. So this might help a little bit. And that's going to just about do it, folks, for this week. We put quite a bit of stuff into this episode. We put it together yesterday in terms of the content, and just didn't have time to do a real quick run through like we usually do tonight ahead of time. So hopefully the audio quality is good, because I'm using my backup microphone tonight. Late last night, I went to move something on the desk, and I actually knocked over a good chunk of the recording setup with knocking over the mic stand and the mic in one fell swoop. Got to get that hooked up again before next week, so we can get back to our regular thing. That was kind of interesting. Don't want to do that again anytime soon. So while I repair the recording studio, that's going to just about do it for this week. Until next week, this has been your host, Sylvester Rock, aka Sly Dude. Look for me in the forum. And as usual, if you've got a comment or something that you'd like to add about the show, post it in the show thread that's in the forum there for the Sunday night chat. And if you got a question that you want to know something about, that's a good place to post it. And as usual, I'll try to have the show notes up soon, although it will probably be tomorrow. And until next week, I'll see you in the forum, guys.